This episode, just like every other episode, is sponsored by Dis-Chem Living Fit. Grab the Living Fit mag with a wide range of fitness, health, bunch of topics that you can learn from, glean, gain information, get new awareness on new styles of training, supplementation, and you can learn a lot. So grab your Dis-Chem Living Fit mag at your nearest Dis-Chem near you. I find it easier. I would rather do 65k trail than 40 on road.
Yeah, agreed.
Because you have the mountains that you need to kind of slow down at times. You can catch your breath.
Breaks it up.
Yeah.
Honestly, comrades is one of the hardest things on the body.
You've done it?
No, it keeps me in business. I'm a physio.
You're a physiotherapist, yes.
And it's just brutal, that monotony of the road. Whereas with the trail, the up, down, the contour, it's so much better for your body. It's hard, but it's better for you.
There's less impact, like direct impact.
Yeah.
So you're a physiotherapist, professional triathlete. Are you still, I guess even if you stopped competing, you're still a professional?
A former professional. There we go.
Okay.
Yes. I haven't raced since 2019, so it's been a while.
So what was your last race?
I did the Israman. It's I love the series Norseman, Patagonman, Canadaman, Israman are Ironman distance races that aren't Ironman brand, but in brutal countryside. And so Israman, it's in Eilat in Israel, and you swim in the Red Sea, and then you ride into the mountains and into the desert. So there's 3,000 meters elevation on the bike.
Yeah.
And then there's a split transition, and you run back down the mountain. Your first 12K is straight down the mountain. And then you do 30K around Eilat in the heat. And it's pretty special, actually.
So it's obviously summer there for you running in the heat.
Yes, it was. Actually, no, sorry, it was there. It's January. So it's their winter, but it was hot.
Yeah.
It's still hot, yeah. Actually, bits of the course weren't hot. Down in Eilat it was, but up up into the mountain was a bit cooler. I think I had arm warmers on. But not cold like Europe. No.
So is it nicer for you to do those ones because it's not like affiliated with Ironman? It's maybe smaller, more culture.
Absolutely. No, those races, there's something special. You know, it's a stupid kind of athlete that goes to it, and it's the brutality of it that really appeals to you. I mean, Ironman's brutal, but those kind of ones ask a little bit more, and there's a different vibe. So, and it's a bit less commercialized, and I don't mean that in any form of disrespect. So there's something a bit more special about them.
What would you say is the biggest differentiating factor between, those and then the Ironman? Is it, having a lot of elevation, whereas Ironman, not usually is it going to be up mountains?
No, there's been a trend in Ironman where I think people are trying to get PBs, so they're going more towards flatter, faster races. Those are tending to be a bit more popular. So to go towards a race where you're not going to brag about your finish time, but you're going to feel epic about having completed it is something good too. And there's usually smaller fields, and it's a bit more pure rather than commercial. But it's an interesting thing in triathlon because Ironman is a brand, but it's also the name of the race. But you can have done a challenge distance Ironman, and can you say you've done an Ironman? But then people are, which Ironman? You're like, no, I did Challenge Barcelona, or and
what are the challenge distances?
They're the same. So it's because it's the same, the half Ironman and the full Ironman, but it's challenge brand. And obviously there's independent races like Israman. But then there's Ironman, which is also a brand, but it's the name of the race. So it gets a bit confusing. But technically the Ironman distance is the full distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What got you into it? Was it one particular discipline and then you kind of diverged, or what was your interest initially into endurance sport?
So I was late to triathlon. I played hockey all my youth and into my adulthood and never quite got where I wanted to. And I found myself playing in the Premier League in England for Leicester. And then I just couldn't consistently perform the way I wanted to in hockey because it's a skilled sport. So sometimes the harder you try, the worse you play. You've got to be in the zone. And I would have an amazing game, but then I couldn't replicate it. And it's a lot of subjectivity too. Someone selects you and the coach gives you pitch time and backs you, and even through a little bit of a poor performance. And so when I turned 30, I'd had enough of hockey, and I moved to London, and my flatmate was part of a tri club, and I just thought, what a nice way to stay fit and meet some people, and I fell into it. and just absolutely found my niche, because fitness was always my strength, and there was less subjectivity to it. If you had the fastest time, you won the race, and there were no ifs and buts. It was up to you. So I loved that.
Yeah, I think there's no real politics in when you start a race at the same time as someone else and you finish. Clearly it's, regardless of your view on the person, you can tell who won.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas with sports, it's your relationship with the coach, it's your relationship maybe with the managers, and all of that can play in your, doing well or not.
Absolutely.
Whereas with triathlons, running, whatever,
absolutely,
it's performance purely.
And it's a different mental strength. The skilled sports like hockey, tennis, golf, the mental side there is huge as well. But the mental side in an endurance sports like running or triathlon, it's more about pain management and race strategy rather than like your nerves for your skill. So that was definitely my strength. I wish I'd found out sooner, but better late than never.
What is it about that mental challenge and overcoming and going into like your own personal pain cave that excites you? What do you get out of it?
Oh, I don't know. It's interesting because I think everyone who goes into triathlon, there's an element of enjoyment in the suffering. And Chris McCormack actually coined a beautiful phrase called "embrace the suck." And there is, when you can push through that and overcome and know that you got the best out of yourself, it's a huge sense of achievement wherever you finished. So that is definitely a huge appeal. And I can tell you that every pro racing has an ability to push through pain, and it can actually be a double-edged sword. I see a lot of the really top pros that almost don't recognize pain enough become quite injured as a result, because by the time it stops you, you're further down the road, and then it's a lot more reversing to get yourself fit and healthy again. But you have to have that ability to endure pain, and when your body's saying stop, you keep going.
And it's nice because it's almost anyone that's run, cycled, whatever, swam. You get to a certain point where you're at that point where you think, actually I can't go anymore. This is my breaking point, and then you have no option but to keep on going, and then you keep on going, and then you realize like, I've actually got more. I've got a lot more in my tank. So what do you think? When you hit that wall almost and push through, like what percent in general, in people maybe, what percentage you think of themselves they're actually giving? Because if you look at people that are running like the Moab 240s and all of these ridiculous distances and over so many days, and then you see someone that, is almost failing at 21K, but that's all mental. They're failing because it's mental. It's not because they aren't physically capable. I'm sure you've seen people talk to you, be like, I've got a goal of running at 21, but maybe that's a bit too much for me right now. And I'm in the opinion that anyone, no matter what stage of training you're in, you can do a 21. Absolutely. Might be slow, and you might be really sore afterwards, but every human has the physicality and the ability to be able to push.
Absolutely. I can tell you now, the limits are always higher than you think. And I certainly found that out when I went pro. It was one of the questions that intrigued me, the what if question. And if I did this, what would it look like? What would the fittest me look like? And what's the best I could do in racing? And I surprised myself, even though I was in my late 30s. And I think with everyone, the limits are so much higher. And the majority of time, the limits are mental. And if you keep going, it's incredible what you can achieve. There's always, especially in a long race like an Ironman, there's going to be a wall that you'll have to push through. And if you can stay mentally strong in that phase, then you'll come through the other side, and actually incredible. I mean, so many times you think, I don't think I'm going to finish, and then you're sprinting the last 2 kilometers because you're in a podium position. Where did you get that from? It was there, So it's absolutely intriguing, and I think that's a big part of the fascination for many athletes, and even for the pros. Like, they want to get that out of them. And the more you race and the more experience you get in that, the more you realize, hang on, this will pass. The first time you get off a bike and run, your legs feel horrific, like jelly legs, and then you realize, hang on, it feels worse than it is. And and each time there's all those little areas that just get better and better from a mental point of view. Like, I've been here before. Keep going.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is that mental acceptance and realization that I've been here. I can do this.
Yes.
And the moment you think that, it just becomes easier.
Absolutely.
For you yourself, I know, I can't remember who I was watching or listening to that basically spoke about this, but it's what I do now is when you almost at that breaking point, or when you're at that point where, you feel like you can't go anymore, but you do need to dig deep. It was the pain cave of visualizing yourself digging further into your pain cave. And I found that really helped me, pushing like, let's say 40K into a race, or, 7 hours into a race or whatever, where while I'm running, I'll visualize just digging deeper into my pain cave and knowing, okay, well, I've dug further in now and I can keep on going, and and just visualizing myself almost like a little miner going through a cave.
Interesting.
And as I go, just digging more and digging more and digging more to see how far I can, explore this pain cave.
Yeah.
What for you, do you talk to yourself, or you just keep, like assert yourself, or maybe like affirm yourself? What do you do personally?
100%. No, absolutely. So you have to know, and particularly in triathlon, by the Ironman, the run hurts. It's just you and your pain. You haven't got the logistics of the swim or bike technicalities or mechanicals. So by the run, it's literally you. And you are going to be in pain. And if you want a PB, you're going to, more so, you'll have to push to a new level. And so you accept the pain because it's essential. So don't be surprised when you're like, wow, I'm really hurting. You're like, okay, I'm pushing for a good time here. But personally, I found it better to distract myself from the pain. So to keep going and to be thinking about what I wanted to get from a performance point of view. But I actually think it's better to, from an emotional point of view, to have something bigger than you. So I always use scripture. I had race mantras and scriptures that I would recite in my head over and over. I know some of the top athletes do various things. I mean, Paula Radcliffe used to count down from 100 and then back up again or something. Just any kind of mundane, and it's sometimes as simple as that. So accept the pain and then distract yourself. If you've got something bigger than you, think about what it is you're racing for, if it's for an achievement point of view or family or a charity or just something outside of you, because your feelings will be telling you, listen, this isn't worth it. This is, why am I doing this? But there is something bigger, and then afterwards you'll be so pleased. And I always used to tell myself as well, like, this pain is temporary, but my time, it's going to be out there forever, and keep going for that. But distraction is definitely a key strategy I use. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think that pain is temporary, but if you did have to give in to the pain and stop,
yes,
that's forever. That regret of not pushing 100%. Through is always going to be there. Even if you had to go the following year and try again, you're still going to know that you gave up. And I think that's the biggest thing for people, is knowing, okay, well, I was at a point where I wanted to give up, but I never. And it's so addictive to push yourself
very
beyond
much.
That point.
And honestly, if you know that you gave absolutely everything, there cannot be regret afterwards. There's nothing more you could have done on the day. So, and that in itself is fulfilling, wherever you were, front end, back end of the field, just finishing. Some of my proudest moments were just finishing in a scenario, in a difficult scenario. But yeah, when you always know in your head when you tapped out, and to not do that is success. Yeah.
I think for me, the most rewarding part of doing and going beyond that breaking point is just realizing, like, oh, I'm capable of so much more. I'm capable of pushing harder than I thought possible. And that's, for me, the most addictive thing. It's not how fit I feel, or even being able to get more likes on Strava because it was the first time, or any of that. For me, the most rewarding thing is I did it even though there was a point where I thought I couldn't. What for you, even now and in the peak in your career, was that driving force to make you keep going and trying to better yourself?
Yeah, I wondered about that. I think that I'm naturally competitive. I'm an identical twin, so I grew up with a identical looking sibling, and you're always competing. And yeah, I always just wanted to get on a podium or be at the front, and that was a huge drive for me. And I would find it quite mentally tough if I wasn't having the race I wanted and I was out of that, just to keep going and saying, right, you're going to regret this if you don't keep pushing and just get the best time you can. But yeah, it's a deep competitive spirit. You're racing your peers, but you're also racing yourself to know that, right, there's nothing else I could have done in this race. There were bigger world champs races where I knew I wasn't going to get on a podium, but I wanted to see how well I could do and test yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and that testing yourself is the most important thing. Getting on a podium to say, okay, well, I came first, second, or third, or whatever, but it's more for yourself. It's more,
absolutely.
I pushed myself to get into that podium. One of my friends told me that his girlfriend said to him, you know why? Don't really get into running because then you're going to become like Jesse, who feels like he has to be better than everyone else. And I was just like, but that's not why I run. That's not why I try to push myself or cycle or whatever thing that I try to push myself in. It's nothing to do with anybody else.
No.
You know, I'm not trying. I've never been on a podium for like the way you have, you know. I've never been on, like had the fastest time in any race, and even maybe like the top 20% is like the best what I've done, you know. So it's never to try beat anyone else or to make myself feel superior to anyone else. It's for me. It's for my own, you know, mental health to be like, okay, well, if I can willingly go through this challenge, if I can openly accept the pain that is going to come from this ultra and go at it head on, what else in life can I overcome? You know, what other challenge in life can I overcome if I'm able to willingly go towards this struggle?
For sure. I mean, there's loads of parallels between sport and life in general and the lessons you learn from both. And I think you're right. I mean, ultimately, particularly in an endurance sport, it's going to be you in your head. So prepare that mental side of it, know your strategies that you want to go to and know what's driving you and come back to that. And if you keep coming back to what's driving you for that particular race, then you can stay on track and you can push through. And it could be that it could be an overall placing, or it could be, right, I'm aiming for this time. So I think it's better to race yourself and to focus on your own process, because you can get derailed if you're focusing on someone else's race. But then you can use other people to push you. I mean, there's no question. If you're trying to stay in a certain position and you're on laps and then you see the other athletes and you're putting on your Terminator face and they're putting on their Terminator face, and it's just to see who can stay out to the end. But yeah, ultimately inside, I think you want to have your big reason, keep coming back to that and race yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you say, okay, well, last time I came fifth. Now I want to come third. It's not, I want to come third so I can be better than 4 and 5. It's, I want to come third because I want to improve on what I did previously. And you use them as like this benchmark to push towards.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are situations that are out of your control. You know, you can only beat the athletes that are there on the day. And also, I mean, it's never plain sailing, and sport is really brutal. I mean, you can be having the race of your life and puncture or have a mechanical, or, you know, someone rides into you, and you got to take those on the chin and keep going too. And I must say, if it's unbelievable what you can do, what you can achieve when you just don't give up till the finish line. I mean, I was trying to race in Asia and I didn't realize I had Lyme's disease. I did not feel well. I knew I wasn't well, and I just needed to try and get something out of it. And I was doing the half Ironman in Phuket, and I felt absolutely rubbish, but I was sitting in third. And it was all I could do just to hang. Actually, I was fighting for second and third, and then I just managed to hang on to third. And I ended up in the medical tent. I mean, it really wasn't pretty. But in that moment, with about 12K to go, and thinking I've got nothing left, and there were 2 girls in 4th and 5th close behind, and they looked so good, and I thought, I'm not showing them how I feel. I was sure they were going to catch me, and I just thought, I don't care. I'm not giving up to the finish line, and I held on to third, and in the moment it seemed impossible, but because I didn't give up, so don't give up till the finish line, and it is unthinkable what you can achieve sometimes. Yeah.
And in the moment, as you said, like it felt like you weren't going to be able to, but then afterwards, you almost like forget the pain that you experienced.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, you know, you've obviously done events where you're exceptionally cold, especially when you're swimming in the ocean. You know, you could be doing a really cold event, or I'll use cold as an example because oftentimes, you know, especially like cycling early morning in winter or something, it's freezing and you're hating it. But then once you're done your ride, you're inside, you've had a coffee, instantly it's like you forget the pain that you had. So I think you just need to be in that mindset of, while you're suffering, I know in an hour, 2 hours, whatever, I'm not going to be suffering anymore. It's going to be gone.
But I'm going to remember my time.
Yes.
And it's amazing how many races you finish where you think, I could have gone a bit quicker afterwards. So for me, it was always saying to myself in the race, am I going to think I've got a bit more afterwards? And be like, no, this is what I've got. And I always knew, nope, that was it. And so you ask that question at the time, afterwards, how am I going to feel about this when it's all done and the pain's gone? And you're exactly right. You forget it quite quickly, especially when you've had a drip. And you feel amazing.
What, obviously, other than having like Lyme's disease in Phuket, but what other like horror stories or difficult challenges have you gone through, in a triathlon?
Oh, no. I mean, actually, unfortunately, because I came into the sport late, I did have quite a bit of injury baggage. But literally 4 days after quitting full-time work to go pro, I was in Mallorca with my coach, Tom Bennett, and there were a squad of us. I was the oldest and the rookie in the squad, and I was on antibiotics because I'd been working full-time and lining up my sponsorships, and I was sick as a dog, unfit, pale. The others were all brown and toned. And the third day, I finally started feeling a bit better. We were on a 100K training ride, and 10K from the end, a car just pulled out in front of us. And I had such a bad crash. I've still got a lovely scar on my shoulder from it. I thought I'd broken my back. And I hadn't broken anything, which is amazing. But I was really sore. I couldn't run for 6 weeks. Couldn't lift my arm for 6 weeks. So I was single arm swimming. And in that moment, I remember questioning, what am I doing? This is the reality of it. And it was hard, actually. But I realized how much I wanted it. And it also... if I sat and I leaned on my arms, it took the pain out of my back. So I thought, well, I'm going to get back on the bike because I can lean on my hands. And if I hit potholes or cobbles, it was awful. But I went on a ride 2 days later, and we did a long climb called Luke, which is part of the Mallorca 70.3 course. And I got up at like halfway through the squad, and people were like, what are you? And there was a little bit of a myth that I was this crazy girl who didn't have a pain threshold. I mean, I cry when I have a leg wax. Trust me, I feel pain. But I was so motivated, and on the races I used that to my advantage. People were like, it's that nutter who doesn't know what pain is. So it helped me in the long run, but it wasn't. It was a real test at the time. Like, literally, this is going to be tough. What am I doing?
Yeah,
that was hard.
That nutter, people looking at you be like, that lady, that guy, whatever, is crazy. And that's also such a good feeling. I remember when I was doing my first ultra in Drakensberg. I was running with a lady who's done, 100 milers and stuff. So she was a lot more experienced than me. And we were running together for most of the run. And then we were running past people that were doing the 23 or the 35 or whatever it was. And then we'd run past them, and then they would ask us, what are you guys doing? And we were like, no, we're doing the 65. And they're like, yo, you guys are crazy. And it was just so nice to hear that, because when I started, obviously, I was the person who was doing the 23, looking at the people doing the 65, thinking, how do they do this? And then it was roles reversed, was now I was the person doing the 65, and these people thought I was crazy. So that was really motivating, because if I look at someone that does a 100 miler, I'm like, that's crazy. I can't do that right now.
No.
But I want to become the person that can do that the other people look up to and be like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. No, it is. And so like we say, pain is part of the motivation, because if it was easy, what would there be to brag about or celebrate? But also remember, your finish line on the day is your finish line. When I did my marathon qualifier last year for Oceans, I remember thinking, how am I going to run another 14K? But your finish line on the day is what you've aimed for that day. So it is what you start and set out to do. But yeah, when you set yourself a real tough finish line, I think you put yourself on the maybe zone. And I can't remember which cyclist it was. And there's this wonderful quote where you ask yourself the question, can I do this? And if the answer is yes, it's too easy. If the answer is no, in his words, you're fucked anyway. The answer one is maybe, because then you're in the right place. The maybe zone is like, I think I can do this, but I'm testing myself. And I think that's where you feel most fulfilled, because you learn your limits and you feel really alive by doing it, and you feel fulfilled afterwards for trying. So I always tell my patients and my athletes, be in the maybe zone, and that's scary because it's an unknown, but that's what makes it so exciting.
That's exactly why I signed up for my first, because I've been running for like 3 months. And then I heard about UTCT, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the 55. And I was watching a video, I think it was Courtney DeVolta, whatever you say her name, that Salomon lady, that crazy
nuts.
lady.
Yeah.
So I saw her, I was watching a video where she's like, I was after a race or like at an aid station or something, she said, just do something that you don't believe you'll be able to finish. Sign up this year for something that you don't believe you'll be able to do. And that's that maybe zone.
It is.
And doing something where you're like, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to set a goal of doing it. Because if you set a goal of, no, I can do that, that's cool. Where's the challenge in that? Where's the difficulty in pushing yourself beyond what the yes, I can.
Absolutely.
Go into the maybe.
That first year, so you must understand, I started triathlon at the age of 30, and over the next few years, I was so fortunate to be part of a great club, and I had a good coach. And I would say that to any novice starting out, join a club, train with others, and get some coaching. It literally transformed me. And I knew I was a good age grouper because I'd won everything I'd set out to do, from British champs, European champs, and the world champs twice. But the decision to go pro, because I'd met the criteria for a pro license, now I'm 37, and I'm thinking, this is nuts. It terrified me. But I had to do it because I just would regret it for the rest of my life, thinking, what would that have been like? And I thought, well, let's just do 1 year and not embarrass myself. And my philosophy for that first year was do it afraid. So I was scared, and every race was, I knew I was a good age grouper, but I thought the girls would eat me alive in the pro scene. And actually, I just went for it. And again, like you say, the limits are higher than you think, and you can surprise yourself. So do it afraid, because that's when you really do feel fully alive.
Had you always previously done things when you're afraid? Like, have you always put yourself in positions where you're not sure if you're capable of handling it?
Yeah, I guess. I suppose I had, because I'd always competed at a high level in hockey. And there's big tournaments, but there you're in a team scenario and slightly different. But yeah, triathlon was the first real sporting endeavor in that regard, of signing up to races, trying to win a local champs, then a national champs, go to the European champs, qualify for the world champs. And my first world champs was in Las Vegas. It was the 70.3 world champs, 2012. And I was on a mid-level, entry-level road bike with clip-on tri-bars. And I rocked up, and I remember everyone looked so fit, and they had these crazy time trial bikes, and I felt like such a joke. And I racked my bike and then stood next to someone else's bike, so it didn't look like mine was the road bike. And I still won it. That felt so good. But it was terrifying. And I wouldn't have believed it till afterwards. Because with age group racing, you don't really know where you are because you're in batches. And I remember finishing and then thinking, wow, okay, that was everything. And then I got to my bag and my phone, and I had like 20 messages going, oh my word. And then my brother-in-law had sent me a message with all the split breakdowns and where I'd come, and I was like, oh my word, I've won this. Like, it was just the best feeling in the world. But a couple of days before, like looking at everyone else, thinking, goodness, what am I doing here? That was something else. So don't just do it afraid.
And that is a parallel to anything in life. Is you arrived there thinking, what am I doing? Maybe I'm out of my depth. Look at these nice bikes, look at mine,
look at all these fit people.
And that's definitely helped me in personal life. Is, let's say you got some business meeting, or you have to give a talk to people or whatever, and you're afraid before, and you just take it and be like, but I was afraid at the start line of that race.
Yes.
And I pushed through, and I was able to do it. And looking back, thinking it was silly of me to be thinking that I wasn't going to be able to do it. So just have that mindset in everything that you do. It might be a scary meeting, but you've done difficult things, and willingly put yourself in position so that now that you're doing this meeting, and go into it at least with the belief that you can do it and you will get through it.
And the more you start taking on, the more your confidence grows. And I must say, and the other good thing, the other strange thing about when things go wrong and you're hurt, then next time you always think, well, I've had worse. So even the things, even the turbulence and the setbacks will feed you and grow you. And all of that builds, and you just keep using it, and you've got to see what else captures your attention, and then go for it.
Yeah.
And if it feels like it's impossible or in the maybe zone, especially go for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. So you're a physiotherapist. Obviously, you help people with injuries. I saw that you obviously also assist people with like a running analysis to have good form.
Yeah.
How important? Obviously, it's very important. But from your point of view, what's the importance of good running form and technique?
No, absolutely. It's so interesting. And firstly, I ended up having quite a bad injury. I was in the shape of my life. I'd had 8 races in a row. I'd podiumed all of them, won 5 of them. And I had done a 2-hour swim, the Guildford swimming pool, and I was walking across a car park and I tripped. And I had a longitudinal tear in my proximal hamstring tendon. Sure. We did everything we could to fix it, and I couldn't, so I had to have an operation. I'm 39 and I'm having a tendon repair, and it was potentially career ending. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't understand this. No good thing can come of it. I wasn't sure I'd get back to pro racing, but I had no choice. I had to have the op, and sold everything I had, rented out my house in London, and moved into my sister's spare room here in Joburg, had the op, and then pretty much lived for free while I rehabbed. And it was an opportunity to work from a clean slate. So when I was rehabbing, I thought, right, let's fix some glitches. I was a high-level compensator, muscly, but cheating my way through a few things. And I knew I had some form errors and some core issues. And so I just literally dialed into the rehab. And when I came back running, my first run was a 4-minute walk, 1-minute run times 5. And that 1 minute was the longest minute of my life. I was so excited to start it. And then I thought, when's this minute going to end? But every single minute that I ran that built up to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 60 minutes, I was intentional about my form, and I pulled in a lot of the rehab I'd done. And I came back in my early 40s running the quickest times of my life. So the hardest thing from a triathlon point of view actually grew me the most as a physio, because I learned so much at that time. And then I had this epiphany that as physios, we treat the running injury, the Achilles niggle or the ITB, and then the runner goes away and runs the same way. And it's actually the running that's so often the cause, and no one's taught to run. So I really started videoing runners, and I wrote a screening tool to look at all the things important to run, from your movement, your biomechanics, to how you control that movement. And I video the runners barefooted and their trainers. And I really love doing that, because you can't change what you don't know. And you can improve their economy and efficiency. And that was a question that my coach and I asked the first year I was pro. How can we get better at each discipline? Because harder is not faster. And the longer you want to go, and this counts particularly for something like comrades, the more efficient you need to be and the more economical. And then you can stay faster for longer. And I just apply that strategy to helping runners. So I particularly specialize in running injuries and working with runners, but I don't care if you're a 5K park runner or a comrades runner. If I can get you, I remember how horrible it was being injured and having compromised training and compromised races. So if I can help someone avoid that, it's my greatest joy now.
And I mean, you can get injured running, as you said, injured tripping in the car park. Even if you're just a weekend warrior running a 5K once a Sunday, you can still be injuring yourself or preventing yourself from progressing.
I mean, the majority of running injuries we see are overuse injuries. And it will happen when you pass the threshold of what your body can cope with. So your body's always compensating, making strategies, but it will run out of options. And that will happen when you step up a distance. And it doesn't matter if you're saying, right, this is my first 21K or my first marathon or my first comrades. And I'll always see the injuries come at the peak volume. And it's simply overuse, because the body's saying, the kinetic chain saying, okay, I'm battling. And pain is not the enemy. Pain is the messenger that your body's sending you to say, right, if the dashboard light of my car didn't come on, I'd run out of petrol on the motorway. And it is pain saying, right, something's wrong, I need some attention. And it's not always that we just take a tablet and ignore it. But it's asking, okay, and for me personally as a physio, my mentality is, that's the symptom. The pain is the symptoms, but what's the cause? And more often than not, it's the run form. And then we can change that. So yes, I'm going to treat the symptoms, but then I'm going to address the cause. That's a big part of my treatment.
Yeah, but it's difficult though, in terms of, okay, I'm sore. Am I being soft? Am I being weak? Can I go train tomorrow? Is it more efficient to have the rest day? Yeah. And it's difficult because as anyone that wants to push harder, you're questioning your mind. You're questioning, am I being weak? Is my body really sore? Am I just looking for excuses? Am I trying to justify why I'm not going to go run tomorrow? So it's a difficult line to walk.
It is. I mean, if I could bottle the difference between good pain and bad pain, I'd do it and make my millions. But I have two helpful things there. One, from a health perspective, it's useful to have an objective measure that you can use, because we there are days you wake up, you don't feel so good, you train and you're fine and you feel better. And there's days you shouldn't have trained and then you fall off a cliff because you get sick. And I used resting heart rate as an amateur and a pro, and I got really accurate with tracking it. And I always knew if it was elevated and I didn't feel so good, I'd back off. And if it was too elevated, I had a guilt-free rest day, and then I would sidestep 2 weeks or an extra week of missing out because I was sick. So I have an objective measure that takes subjectivity out of it. Because there are days that you can be so motivated for a session and then do it when you shouldn't. and vice versa. So from a health perspective, resting heart rate or whatever metric works for you, but a heart rate one, I never found a decent heart rate variability app, but heart rate variability is quite accurate as well. And our smartwatches tell us so much now. From a pain, musculoskeletal point of view, yes, there is pain that you endure. I believe that it should always settle within 24 hours. So discomfort that eases during a session, your body's adapting. And then pain that's other than DOMS, your delayed onset muscle stiffness, that will last a couple of days. But if it settles within 24 hours and you then back to normal, you're adapting and you're getting further. But if it's continuing or it's regressing, then it's not, your body's sending you a bigger and bigger message. So in sports medicine, they use the 3 out of 10 rule, which I don't know what 3 out of 10 is. When I'm motivated, my 3 out of 10 is your 6. But I use the yes-no rule. Is the pain worsening during the activity? Yes, no. Is the pain worse afterwards, like the next day? And does it hang around for longer than 24 hours? Yes, no. You can always answer that question. And then that guides you to maybe like adapt, back off, or see a physio and check it out.
Oh, is that a Garmin?
Yes.
So do you trust like where it says like 24 hours recovery or like, I mean, my training readiness right now is awful.
Yeah.
If I look at a chair, I mean, my body battery is on 20, which is bad.
Yeah.
But my training readiness is poor. It's 21.
Yeah.
And I didn't train yesterday. I rested. I mean, I ran this morning, but you see, it's also taking in the sleep that it might not have picked up my sleep as accurately. So now it thinks I'm not as ready to train.
Yeah, you've got to learn your body, and if you find that your watch is accurate and you're using all the metrics accurately, then it's useful. But find something. I mean, for me, it was literally just resting heart rate. First couple of minutes awake. I mean, I would measure it before I had a smartwatch, and I always knew I'd just take a count for 30 and then times it by 2, and I had my heart rate, and I could feel the pulse, and I knew before I'd even done the count where I was at. And then for 2 weeks, I would check what my watch said my resting heart rate was, and it was always within a 1 or 2 beats. So, I literally found that my most helpful metric from a health perspective.
So how much higher, let's say, would your heart rate be for you to...
Yeah, when I was fit, my resting heart rate was 38 to 40. If it was over 45, I was cautious. And if it was over 48, I didn't train. 48 to 50. I mean, that's a big jump because 10% is only 44. So, and 10% is a big jump. So I was cautious if I had gone up by anywhere between 2 to 4 or 5 beats. And if it was anywhere above that and I didn't feel good, that was guilt-free, day off. And my body's fighting something. I don't know about it, but my body's dealing with something. And a day off could be a yoga session. It could be a full rest day. And an easy day could be a really easy swim, but like listen to it. But yeah, I mean, I got that wrong. I mean, as an amateur, I rocked up to a cross-country race and my friend found me like incoherent, pale and hugging a tree, and I ended up in an ambulance. And I had a virus that I didn't know about. And you've got to be so careful. Athletes do not use the neck check. They say if it's below the neck, you're fine. Nada. If it's viral, do not push your heart. You are at such risk. You just listen to your body. And, so often we pitch up to a race and we think, oh, I'll just do it anyway. And, you're sick. You're not going to have the race you want. And if it's viral, you might never race again, which sounds hectic, but it happens. So, we've got to listen to our bodies at the end of the day. And know how to listen to them. Like you say, there's elements of, you're in the race and you're fit and healthy, okay, push through the pain. But if your body's sending you messages before, then what can you do to help it the most?
Yeah. And other than running form, how important is like the shoes and getting an analysis of, do you need neutral?
Yeah. No, I mean, footwear is key the longer you go. And it's probably the most controversial topic. You could see 3 different people and they'd probably give you slightly different answers. So the most important thing with trainers is comfort factor. I call it the Goldilocks factor. You should never run in a pair of trainers. You work in wearing your work shoes or Jimmy Choos or high heels or whatever, but trainers, they should be perfect from the first go, from the first step, and they should stay that way. If your toes are going numb or you're blistering, I don't think it's the right trainer for you. And if there's anything that's a bit off, so being able to test a pair of trainers and just even over a short distance, but knowing what works for you, it's a bit trial and error, if I'm honest. And then there is an analysis element where you could look at the foot action We're not so stuck on foot types now, the flat feet or high arch foot. And people are like, oh, I'm a pronator. Everyone pronates. We have to pronate. It creates the windlass mechanism, which locks your foot so you can push off. Too much pronation is a problem. Too little is a worse problem, because now you've got less shock absorption and it's going to go somewhere. So the longer you're running, if you're in the wrong shoes, you're going to get injured. So, and particularly for me with foot or shin injuries, I'm checking the shoe first, but often it can come from higher up too. And don't run through a pair of shoes that are too old if they've done their shelf life. So roughly 800 kilometers. If you're really heavy and hard on your shoes, it'll be a bit less, or a bit more if you're petite. And if they're more than about a year and a half old, I don't think they're doing what they should from a performance perspective.
I'm so bad. I replace my shoes after every 400 Ks.
Wow. And it's I mean, I salute that, but it is expensive.
It is expensive, but it's also addictive. It's also nice because last year I had 5. What do you run with? What do you prefer? Obviously you got race day, recovery, all of that.
Actually, I might be the wrong person to ask, or the right person, but I'm like the bronze statue with clay feet. My most significant injuries happen at my feet, and they give me a lot of problems, and so I end up switching shoes. But I was in the Adidas Adizeros and the Bostons, and then I tore my plantar fascia sprinting out the water in Thailand, and my foot sank into the sand, and that was super sore. And after that, I found the Hoka is much more comfortable, and I was in the Cliftons, and then they changed the Cliftons, and my feet started not liking those. So I mix it up, but I'm in a neutral shoe. I like good cushioning. And a rocker sole, because I have bunions. So if you've got a stiff big toe, a rocker sole helps you quite a lot. So I'm sort of venturing around now. I'm back in the Bostons, but I'm not 100% sure they're working for me. So it is a little bit difficult. But runners are unbelievably loyal. If you find a brand that's working and a type of shoe that's working, then great. Don't change it, but don't stick to it if you're having issues. But it is difficult.
Yeah,
go somewhere if you can.
Because there's so many options.
Go somewhere if you can where you've got a week to test the shoe. Keep it immaculate. And even if you test it on a treadmill, and then you'll know within a kilometer or two if it's the right trainer for you.
I'm very hesitant to go to a place where they will analyze your structure or tell you what to do, just because I just don't want them to be driven by commission on what they're selling.
And everyone's got a bias, if I'm honest, whoever it is. So, I mean, I've just discussed Adidas and Hoka's, but that's what I've been using. And people always say, what's the best shoe? And my answer is, there is no best shoe. There's a best shoe for you. So, check it out. And you guys at the trainer shops, they know the shoes. And it's a little bit of a lottery as to whether what they're looking at with you is accurate or not. So sometimes there are guys that have got a great eye and can be like, no, you should be in the shoe, and they're right. And then there's other times where they're not, I'm afraid. So it's really tricky, that.
Yeah, I just watch about 50 different YouTube videos on reviews, and then I had last year I had 4 pairs of Clifton 9s that I went through in the year. So I really love the Clifton 9s.
They worked for you.
Then I went recently to the Asics, just because I was like, I've used the Cliftons for so long. Maybe a pair of Asics would be better for me, and I'm enjoying them, but I do think I'll go back to the 9s, to the Cliftons. So it's also, once you enjoy something and you feel like it's good for you and you feel happy running in it, because I do think you must be excited to put your shoes on and to run in them.
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to that feeling good in them. And if you find a shoe that works for you, get another pair, alternate your pairs, you'll get more life out of them. But there's this theory that you should have different shoes and it stimulates your feet or keeps you strong. And I'm like, no. If you find a shoe that works, then stick with that. Why would you mess with the formula? I mean, I'm never going to change the setup on my bike every single ride just to stay awake, So, there's a lot of myths like that out there, which I think are detrimental to runners. But the Goldilocks factor, find the shoe that works for you and then stick with it. And if that changes, and it does, your feet change, your body changes, then go with that.
Because people will say, okay, you need a pair of tempo shoes, then you need a pair of recovery shoes, then you need race day shoes. So I can understand your max cushion shoes. It's going to be more difficult to run a fast time than a race day shoe or a tempo shoe. But it's also marketing by these companies that want you to buy all 3 or 4 variations of their range. So I understand, but you can still push really hard in cushion shoes.
Yeah.
It might be more difficult, they might be more heavy, but then you're just working harder. So
Yeah.
you can still try push in your speed shoes.
Yeah.
It's just not going to help you a little bit more. But
No,
when
there's
you have your race day shoes, maybe I just have 2 pairs of shoes. You don't have to have like 4.
No, exactly. And it depends, it depends on your budget and your goals. I mean, we're not trying to break the sub 2. If you're trying to break the sub 2, then whatever it is, sure, you're going to get every single margin. I mean, I love Dave Brailsford's philosophy of marginal gains, and certainly the shoe is a margin, and it's been breaking records with the carbon shoes now. And so it will give you something, but I can tell you as a physio that I'm seeing injuries just from those shoes. And the shoes are designed around the elite athletes and elite performance. So the margins get bigger the faster you are. They get more important, should I say.
And their efficiency of their running form is
100%.
almost perfect.
It's perfect. And I'm particularly hesitant around the really narrow heel, that sort of fin tail. Because if you're a heel striker, you're landing on a platform where you either flip out or in. And I mean, I run behind runners and I think, oh, they're in the wrong shoe. And I don't always have the guts to say to them, listen, I don't think you're in the right shoe. Or could just say, when you get sore, give me a call.
Because you're behind them. You can't say anything.
You see the foot action. I mean, any runner doing a big event, a massive event, I'm telling you, look at the runners around you, how they're running and what's happening at their feet. And you can see, oh, that doesn't look good, or oh, that looks great, and so I would say to anyone, like, video your form or just put your iPhone behind you on a treadmill, and from the back and from the front, what are your feet doing? You can look barefoot, but it does help when you know what you're looking for. And it's tricky because it's expensive, and to consult a podiatrist, it is expensive, and a lot of the time it's a bit like going to a surgeon. They cut, a podiatrist makes orthotics. So for me, a great podiatrist is one that says you don't need an orthotic. This is the best shoe for you. Because they're not necessarily just making money out of giving you an insert. So if you're having issues with your feet, look at the footwear first, and then look at your foot action. And if you just can't figure out the right trainers for you,
Awesome. Where's your practice based?
Oh, I'm in Santon.
Yeah. So. And how can people find you, reach out to you? What's the name of your practice?
Oh, it's Parys Edwards Physio. Parys Edwards Physiotherapy. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have to name our clinics after our names here, apparently. So, there it is. Easy to find.
Easy to find. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I really appreciate you making the trip
pleasure.
here.
Thanks for having me.